Thank you so much. My name is Andrew Morris. I'm the founder and CEO of GrayNoise. This talk is called Lowering Signal to Noise. Really excited to be talking to you guys today. Thank you all for tuning in. And yeah, like Sean mentioned, if you have any questions about anything, tweet it, put it in the chat. I'll try to find it. And if I don't get to it during the talk, then I'll just jump right over during the Q&A. So super excited to do this. I'm going to get started here real quick. This talk's going to be pretty content heavy. I want it to be relatively technical. I don't want to try to sell you guys anything. So I'm really just going to talk about what GrayNoise is. And I'm going to talk about some of our most common use cases, some of the things that we're going to be doing in the future. And then I'm just going to answer your questions. So like I said, my name is Andrew Morris. I'm based in Washington, D.C. with a couple of my colleagues here. I'm the founder and chief executive of GrayNoise. I started GrayNoise in 2017, which means that we're about 3 years old now. Before founding GrayNoise, I was on the R&D team at Endgame. And before that, I had a career as a security consultant at a few different security consulting shops, mostly focusing on offense. In this talk, I want to talk about what internet background noise is. I want to talk about what GrayNoise is. I'm going to talk about our visualizer, our query language. I'm going to talk about a couple of the different use cases that people use GrayNoise for to kind of bring value to your day-to-day job at work. Responding to alerts and events as a security analyst, as a security researcher, as a practitioner, as a hobbyist, etc. And then I'm going to talk about some of the things that we plan on doing in the future. And then I'm just going to kind of wrap it up. So here's the problem, right? There's this whole concept of internet background noise, right? And internet background noise is this really interesting kind of phenomena that occurs where every single device that is routable on the internet is basically subjected. So that means routable as in, not behind a router, but directly on the internet. It has its own routable IP address. So it's a server directly exposed to the internet, or your modem, or, a website, or a VPS or something like that, or a giant corporate network, right? That where there's a DMZ that's facing the internet. Every device that's routable on the internet is subjected to a massive barrage of opportunistic internet-wide scan, crawl, and attack traffic from thousands and thousands and thousands of IP addresses all around the internet, right? So if you go to, AWS, DigitalOcean, your favorite cloud hosting provider, and you plug in, you turn on a VPS and you just immediately turn on TCP dump, or you start, tailing your auth log, or you start looking at, like the web server logs or something like that, you're going to notice that right off the bat, you're seeing people scan you. You're seeing people probe your device, right? And it's so confusing because it's like, look, I haven't even told anybody about this thing yet, right? Like there's no legitimate users for this service. I haven't told it to anybody. Why are people scanning me? Like, what is going on? How is this happening already? This is actually happening as a result of a combination of a lot of different things. Good guys, like legitimate security companies and companies that are legitimately scraping and crawling the internet for content. Companies like Shodan that scan the internet constantly just to find open ports, or Google that are crawling web servers to try to index content for search. Those are some examples of the good guys that are actually generating some of this noise all around the internet. And then there's examples of bad guys, right? Like the Mirai botnet, WannaCry, et cetera, that have nefarious purposes. They're trying to compromise as many devices as humanly possible. If you're defending a really big network, this traffic can really add up, right? So, I mean, on one server, it's one thing to see, a couple thousand packets every day. But if you've got a huge DMZ, with maybe, tens of thousands or even maybe millions of routable IPs, you're talking about a tremendous amount of traffic that's going to be hitting you from, potentially millions of IP addresses around the internet. You end up with this problem of, is everybody else seeing this stuff? Like, which of these alerts that are being generated are hitting me specifically? Is this hitting everybody? Is this just hitting me? What are they looking for? Why are they looking for it, right? So there's a billion security companies out there that are telling you what to freak out about. And honestly, that's fantastic. Like, that's really, really powerful. But from our side, from our perspective, we're really approaching things from the exact opposite direction. We're really trying to think, what should you not worry about? Right? There's enough companies telling you what to worry about. We're going to try to focus on the things to just tell you, hey, this thing's hitting everybody. Don't quite worry about it, right? So our solution to this problem is GrayNoise. GrayNoise is a distributed system of passive collector sensors that sit in a gajillion different data centers all around the internet. They are kind of like honeypots, right? Like they sit back, they run different services. They're in all these different data centers and all around the internet in all these different countries in hundreds of different data centers, and they just sit back and do nothing. They sit back and they just collect the traffic, the unsolicited traffic that comes to them from all these different hosting providers and different ASNs. And the collectors basically take from the very lowest interaction humanly possible, just a connection, all the way up to protocol emulation, things like, web server requests or exploits or login attempts or things like that, right? We take this from all these different collector sensors. Again, they have no business value whatsoever. So that means nobody should be legitimately communicating with any of these things, right? So anything that we see in all these different places, we stream all the data that all of these different collectors are seeing in all these different places into one place where we process it, we enrich it, and we apply hundreds of analytics onto it to come out with this concept of tags, malicious and benign, to try to explain what things are, what they're coming from, what these IPs are looking for, etc. And we basically put all of that into our API, which is exposed to our various different integrations, including a web interface that I'm going to be talking about a good bit today. So our web interface is free for everybody, and we charge money for our API for our enterprise product. We got to pay the bills somehow. So I'm going to talk about the GrayNoise visualizer. If you are watching this on a computer and you have a web browser available, just go ahead and open up viz.graynoise.io, viz.graynoise.io. This is our GrayNoise visualizer. I'm going to jump over there right now, and I have here in this browser the GrayNoise visualizer. So now this is a web interface that allows anybody around the world to drive through this traffic, do searches, do lookups, drive around the data and try to get a bit of a picture of it. So let's just do a quick query. Let's say last seen the last 1 day. Let's just do everything that we've seen the last day. So we've seen 1.4 million IP addresses scanning and crawling the internet in the last day. That's super, super interesting. Over here on the left, we see the aggregates of a couple of the different stats or a couple of the different factors that were features or data points that we're collecting. And then over here on the right, we have basically the individual IP addresses, right? So it's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, we're seeing this guy right here. What's he doing? So this IP address right here is scanning the internet for port 22. And it looks like he's only been scanning the internet today, coming from this ASN. And it looks like additionally scanning the internet for this router RPC service. So now let's actually filter it down a little bit more. And let's say I want to see everybody who is malicious today, right? So I'm going to say last seen 1 day, classification malicious. Cool. So now I've got basically, this is an example of what our web interface looks like, what you can use it to do, et cetera. So I'm going to jump back over here, and you'll notice me kind of jumping back and forth between this the entire time. So that's the web interface. Please feel free to drive around in that as I'm talking about things. So now I want to talk really briefly about GNQL, which stands for the GrayNoise query language. The GrayNoise query language is basically just a faceted search language that you can use to write powerful queries against all of our data. You can use this to look up individual IP addresses, to look at things that fall inside of CIDR blocks, to do queries by ASNs, lots of different kinds of metadata. But you can also do queries for things like activity or intention or things that GrayNoise actually applies, right? So let's see, you can do searches based on port protocol. You can do things based on what an HTTP path that people might be crawling the internet for, right? Classification, et cetera. You can also do really powerful compound queries. So here, I'm going to jump back over here to the visualizer. I already showed you a really quick example of something we could do, like last seen today, classification malicious, and then, why don't we add, IP, you don't even have to write that. So I'll just do everything that falls inside of 8.8.8, 0/8. Cool. Well, we've found 11 devices here in this CIDR block that we have identified as compromised. Cool. Now, this is a really powerful query language because you can actually do other things. It's got one of the things I really like about it a lot is that it has tab autocomplete. So when you're doing tag searches, you can basically scroll through everything. Oh, let's see everybody who's crawling the internet for Chromecasts, right? Oh, cool. Let's see everybody let's see all of the different benign actors that GrayNoise is tracking. Cool. I can click down here and I'm able to actually tab over into these and look at basically, some of the different results we have here. So the GrayNoise query language is actually documented here. If you go to the cheat sheet and you go to queries, This is some of the facets that you can use, and then I'll go through a couple other examples as I'm going through here, right? So the GrayNoise query language is a powerful way that you can basically drive through our data. Next up, I'm going to talk about some of the common use cases to use GrayNoise. The most common use case that we have, and these are all free use cases that anybody can use with our free products. You don't have to pay us any money to use any of this stuff. So is everybody hitting this? Is this IP address hitting everybody, or is it just hitting me? And what is it up to, right? This is a super common thing, right? You see an alert come up, you see a log generated by one of your products or by a piece of software. An IP address is doing something to somebody that belongs to something that belongs to you. You just want to know, what is this thing? Is it hitting everybody, or is it just hitting me? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jump into a server real quick, a live server on the internet, and I'm just going to open up the authentication log, and I'm going to look at who's brute forcing it, and then I'm just going to check to see, hey, are they just brute forcing me, or are they basically brute forcing everybody on the internet? So here, I'm going to grab this IP address. It's a server, and I'm going to log into it real quick. And cool, I'm in here now. I'm going to write less var log auth.log. This is my SSH log. All right, it looks like, okay, hey, look, right here, we've got a invalid login attempt from this guy on user admin from this IP address. Cool, I'm going to copy this IP address, jump over into the GrayNoise visualizer, and I really hope we find it. Yeah, we do. Great, awesome. So GrayNoise already knows about this thing. It is an SSH brute forcer, brute forcing, SSH on port 22. This IP address has been observed attempting to brute force SSH server credentials between these two times. This is the metadata that we know about it. Great. I now know this IP address is not just coming after me specifically. This thing is brute forcing everybody on the entire internet. That's awesome, right? This is not a GrayNoise, this isn't a GrayNoise node right here. This is just a random server sitting on the internet. So if you can do the exact same thing. I'm going to open it up. Maybe I'll try it one more time, and hopefully I'll have the same amount of luck that I did with the last one. Oh, please know about this. I think this is actually the same one. Well, in any event. Nope, this is a different one. Great, awesome. So anyways, that's the first use case over here. The second use case is going to be, all right, well, is anybody exploiting this vulnerability, right? Okay, I have a vulnerability that everybody's announced. Everyone's freaking out about a new vulnerability. It's got a, ghost blue, SMB, cat bleed, shaker, I don't know, whatever, right? So there is this, hot new vulnerability. Everybody's freaking out about it. And I just want to know, is anybody actually exploiting this vulnerability opportunistically on the internet? And if so, where are they doing it from? Is anybody probing the internet for this vulnerability? Is anybody other than the good guys doing this? Well, we can use GrayNoise to find out, again, without paying anything or creating any accounts or anything. So let's say I'm going to use the first example, Heartbleed. I think we have a tag for this one. So I think, yeah, Heartbleed scanner. This has been announced. Oh, wow, I see a number of different devices on the internet that are basically scanning or crawling the entire internet for systems that are vulnerable to Heartbleed. That's really interesting. So what about over here? Let's see, SMB Ghost. Let's do, what about people who are looking for, oh yeah, we've got, right here we have a tag that's the people who are looking for the SMB Ghost vulnerability, right? So we have a tag here that basically just has people that are crawling the internet to find people vulnerable to SMB Ghost. Awesome, so I can see this IP address here is crawling the internet for this path, and it's looking for systems that are vulnerable to SMB Ghost. Well, what if there is no cool, sexy name for it, right? Well, in that case, I can actually do things by CVE. So let's see, I don't actually remember. I'll just do like, what would the actual Blue Keep CVE, right? I think, okay, here we go. I'm gonna look up this CVE in GrayNoise. CVE, this guy. Oh, awesome. So I've now found systems by searching based on CVE, systems that are crawling or probing the internet, looking for devices vulnerable to this CVE, which happens to be Blue Keep. Right? So now it looks like mostly good guys, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest here in this case. What if I want to see people that aren't good guys that are crawling the internet for this? I can say minus benign. I want to subtract all of the benign actors out and look for people who are crawling the internet for Blue Keep other than the good guys. This guy's pretty interesting right here. We see this guy is actually scanning the internet for Blue Keep, but it's not coming from a known benign actor. Super interesting, right? So now I'm going to jump right back over and go back over here. The last use case that I'm going to touch on really briefly is just how do we find, as a byproduct of all of these systems that are opportunistically scanning and exploiting devices, likely that have been compromised by botnets or anything like that, we can actually use GrayNoise to identify compromised devices all around the internet. Now, most of these are not, super APT compromise, super APT bad guy devices. Most of these are actually just devices that have been compromised with, some commodity malware that is, probably going to be used serving ads or sending spam or something like that. Now, certainly there can be more malicious things, and often there are. But just because something is compromising GrayNoise does not necessarily mean it's some super APT bad guy stuff. And then vice versa, just because, sometimes bad guys do, really, really advanced bad guys do actually use GrayNoise or do actually, do bad things that do show up in GrayNoise, and you should be concerned about that. It just generally varies. So I'm going to grab, this is a really long GNQL query that I strung together a couple of words. I'm going to jump over here into the visualizer, and I'm just going to basically say, hey, let me see everything that is classification malicious that includes the words bank or bureau, government, school, university, hospital, military, last seen in the last 1 month. Well, this thing wants to tell me that we have 0 results, but I know that that's not true. So there's probably some kind of typo here. I'll do bank, let's see, demo guys, bank or military or school or university. Cool, that should work. Awesome. So now we've got every device that GrayNoise says is malicious that includes the word bank or military or school or university. How about in the last 1 month? Awesome. So now we've identified a bunch of these interesting devices in the last month that appear to be compromised, mostly in countries, in kind of developing countries where the infrastructure isn't maybe quite as great. But sometimes there's really interesting things in here. Middle Tennessee State University. Let's see, what about in the last 1 day? I don't know if we'll see. Oh yeah, we still found some. That's pretty cool. Let's see, so I take out university. Here's a bank. There's a compromise, a couple banks, wow. Anyways, so this is one way to identify interesting compromised devices in GrayNoise, right? Looks like I've only got about 7 minutes left, so I'm gonna breeze through these here pretty quick. There's actually been an increase in people scanning the internet, spoofing their source IP. What that basically means is that they never actually receive the responses by and large. And it just creates additional noise. One of the ways that we're actually dealing with this in a recent release is that we've actually added the ability to filter based on things that are spoofable and things that are not spoofable. And the way that we're doing this is by basically looking at who's completed full three-way handshakes and not just spoofing SYN scans, right? So I just wanted to have like a really quick slide in here about that. I want to really briefly talk about some future plans that we have. We have an enterprise feature right now that it's used for our enterprise customers who have either that are doing enterprise trials or that have access to our command line, or rather our API. So we have this idea called of GrayNoise Analyze. I'm going to basically just do like, hey, let me get the first 1,000 lines of this log file. And I'm going to pipe this to GrayNoise Analyze. I'm just going to basically read this raw log file. We'll see I don't know how fast this is going to go. We will find out. No, it's not that bad. So what this actually did is this is going through a log file, a raw log file, and it's identifying how many IPs are noise and how many are not. It looks like 96% were known by GrayNoise. There was one benign actor coming from these ASNs, mostly malicious. And if we go down here, unsurprisingly, the vast majority are SSH brute forcers and SSH scanners. So this is something that is in our API. We're actually going to be bringing this feature to our web interface for free for everybody to use. So basically, the same thing, you're going to be able to go to this analysis page where you're going to be able to paste logs, free text. We're going to basically extract IPs out of everything. You can either paste raw logs, you can upload a file, you can paste a bunch of IPs in here. It's going to analyze the data, and it's basically going to come back with the exact same data that I was just showing you in our web interface, and anybody's going to be able to use this. And so you're going to basically be able to declutter some of these log files that you have, identify interesting things that are going on inside them, and ultimately just you want to end up figuring out the things that you really need to worry about versus the things that that are just blowing up the entire internet. So that's one thing. The next thing that we're working on kind of next is this idea of GrayNoise alerts, where, ideally, if you're a company that has a really large network, it's possible that a system that, that belongs to you might get really infected and start compromising other systems on the internet. So you can actually write, we're building this capability right now that's going to allow you to create GrayNoise alerts that are basically going to look kind of like this. Here's a number of CIDR blocks. Here's a set of criteria. If anything matches this, just send me an email. Now, the way that we're probably going to do this is, for free users, we're probably just going to allow you to send an email like once a day, or like get an alert up to once a day or something like that. And then for our enterprise customers, we'll probably just let you do that in real time. And maybe have allow you to watch for more CIDR blocks or something like that. I'm not sure. That's basically what we have for alerts. And it looks like I'm just about at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude right here. The short version is, look, the internet is a really, really noisy place. There are tons and tons of devices that are opportunistically scanning and attacking the entire internet. And this is really bad, but it's not something that people should be losing a ton of time and energy over. False positives cost companies money, just like breaches cost people money, right? And it's really important to remember that. And a lot of the alerts that are generated by security products are actually, being generated by, good guys, bad guys, et cetera, that are constantly blasting the entire internet. It's not the kind of thing that security analysts should be spending too much time worrying about. So again, use GrayNoise to save time during your triage, your investigation, to have a better understanding of all the things that are going on the open internet. We will always have free products. We are a commercial for-profit company, but we will always have free products because the community is one of the best things that we have going for us. And we give free enterprise access to developers, researchers, et cetera. So if this sounds like something that would be interesting to you, always please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you have any feature requests, comments, feedback, et cetera, I would really love to hear from you. You can email hello@graynoise.io, and we'll get right back to you as soon as we possibly can. I am 2 minutes ahead of schedule. So with that, I would like to say thank you so much for joining me on this. Thank you to the people who have already donated to Nurse's Home. I can't remember. And it's important. I really, really stress any amount is going to be helpful. So please think about doing that. I would really appreciate that. I've donated. I would appreciate it if other people do too. Thank you very much. I'm going to jump over into the Q&A session now.